If you've ever been told that you have tight hamstrings, or if you've ever been told your quads are weak, you got to make them stronger, you're going to want to watch this. So, you went to a well-meaning but kind of uninformed PT, and they told you, oh, your hamstrings are tight. We're going to have to stretch them out. And they lay you on a table, and they just want to stretch those hamstrings out. Guess what? Your hamstrings, let's go over what they do, right? What hamstrings do is first where they are. They attach at the ischial tuberosity, or your sits bone. When you sit down, those bones you sit on is where the top of the hamstrings attach. And then you've got hamstrings, they come out on the outside and the inside of your knee, and they attach below your knee. So a lot of people think that what hamstrings do is, they use a machine and they do this, right? They push against resistance, or they lie down on a table and they push against resistance to strengthen those hamstrings. Well, guess what? Hamstrings, while yes, they do flex the knee actively when they shorten concentrically, right? When they do that, just like your bicep, when it shortens concentrically to do a curl, it does that. They do that. However, in real life, when do you go around and do that? You don't. In real life, we kick balls, we swing our leg forward to take a step when we're walking. We use our legs very differently. We don't tend to walk around going backwards with our foot, right? Unless you're pretending you're a horse and you're trained and you're counting, okay? So that said, how do hamstrings function in that aspect? Because your muscles are designed to function in the context in which they're being used. And if you're not using your hamstring like this, why are you training it like that? So what you want to do is you want to train it in a way that it's used, right? So how does my hamstring work in real life? Well, when I go to take a step, wherever the hamstring is getting longer, it's controlling the motion. So when I initiate going to take a step, this muscle in the front of my hip is shortening to kind of lift my hip up a little bit. But the hamstring's getting longer here at the ischial tube, right, at the butt bone. So it's going to control that to a certain extent so that it just doesn't keep going. So it's controlling that motion. And then it's going to get longer down here at the knee as the knee starts to straighten, and it actually facilitates and assists with that knee getting straight during gait. And it controls the swing of the leg forward. So, seems to me, if that's how we use the hamstring, maybe training it as it gets longer under tension would be more practical, right? Not training it to get shorter under tension, because it doesn't really work in that aspect for most of life, if not all. And then the quads. You're told, oh, your quads are weak, you've got to strengthen your quads. So what does everybody do? They do this, right? They do this. They push against resistance repetitively to strengthen their quads. And they might have their toes go in a little bit to work the outer quad, and they might have their toes go out a little bit to work the inner quad. And even the tracking of the kneecap, if you're anyone who's ever been familiar with that, when you put your fingers on either side and you slowly straighten your knee, your kneecap kind of comes in and goes up and out like an arc. And the only part of the muscle that's responsible for pulling it in is the VMO, the vastus medialis oblique. And so a lot of people will strengthen that VMO by toes out and straightening that way, or laying down on the bed and keeping the toes out and lifting the leg so that VMO can work, right? So if that's all we think about with the quads, maybe we might want to see, well, how do we use our quads in real life? Do we walk around doing this? I don't tend to sit in a chair and do this, right? So why am I training it like that? How do quads really work? Well, when you're going downstairs, your quad is getting longer under tension, controlling your descent, right? Now, obviously, there's a whole lot of other body parts. It's not just one muscle or one body part that's controlling you when you're upright. Your whole body, from your nose to your toes, is a team. But that's really in the context of like going downstairs. In the context of walking, your quads are, getting longer. When my hip goes back, yeah, my hip flexor is getting longer, but so is my quad because my knee is straight, my hip is extending, so that's part of controlling. So why aren't we training the quad in a way that matters, right? Having it learn how to control getting longer under tension so that when real life happens, my muscles know what to do. So let's stop doing things that aren't authentic and start doing things that are, right? So what would we want to do? Well, we could do squats, which works the whole thigh very well, right? It also includes max, and that's your power source, right? You really want that power there. It also works your calves. Squats are beautiful. Now, you might be somebody who can't really do squats because it aggravates your knees, or you're not strong enough, or some other reason. Ideally, if you focus on the power source back here, it won't aggravate your knees so much. That does require a little bit less of the quads, right? But you can do, if you do it that way, you hang on to the kitchen sink and you keep your knees back against the chair and you don't let your knees go forward, it's going to take more power in the hamstrings and the glutes and a little power in the quads. Obviously the quads are working here because they're getting longer down here, right? Hamstrings getting longer up here. So you are working both, but it tends to not aggravate the knee as much. If you've got just one knee that's not happy, put it forward just a little bit and the other knee will do more work, and the one that's not happy gets a little off, hanging on, and that will often help, right? Only going as low as you can go, even if you can only go this far, repetitively, successfully, you'll build on that success. You'll create that nice fluid-filled pumping mechanism that helps those muscles to perform better. Without complaining, they start to get back to their job. All is well. The brain's not trying to cheat because you're safe, you're not hurting yourself, and it says, okay, muscles, you can go ahead and work because I'm not trying to protect you right now. I don't have to. Nothing's hurting. I don't need to try to use the wrong muscles or the wrong pathway or train in dysfunction. All's good. Go ahead and start doing what you can do, right? So there's that. Now, so those are very good. Lunges, right, or what I would call stepping, is very functional, and that you can do lots of modifications. So say I want to step forward with my left leg, which means my right leg is going to be bearing weight as I step forward. So hanging on, the opposite of the leg that's bearing weight will often take some stress off that leg. It'll make things easier. If you've got any kind of balance or stability issues, you'll be safe, right? And so when I step forward, I'm putting all that weight into that front leg, so my quad is working, right? It's getting longer as that knee bends, and my hamstring's getting longer up here, so they're both working. It's going to be functional, authentic human movement. And you don't have to do things feet perfectly side by side, perfectly hip width apart. A lot of that was taught so that people wouldn't injure themselves. However, if you're not trying to do some maximum squat press of like 400 pounds, you can use different foot positions because it's a great way to get your body ready for real life. What if I'm going to squat under the sink and grab something, right? I'm in the middle of cooking. I'm like, oh, I got to get that pan out from under there, and I do this. Guess what? My feet are not perfectly side by side, hip width apart. I've actually got one foot turned in just a little bit. Oh, what if I never trained that way? And my leg says, I don't know what to do when you do that. So you don't have to do everything perfect, right? You start, you can have one foot a little bit forward. You can have one foot turned in a little bit. You can do a wide stance. You can do a narrow stance. You can have a foot turned out a little bit. Train in a little bit of a difference. We're not talking, ballet, right? We're not talking, completely pointed in. We're talking slight, which is very possible when you're living life that you're going to be slightly turned out, slightly turned in. It happens. So why not train that way? The same thing with the lunges. Don't always just do lunges directly forward or directly sideways or directly backward. Change the angles a little bit, right? Say you're unloading groceries from the car and you go to reach into the trunk and you do this. Well, guess what? I'm at an angle now. I got what foot turned out. I'm not this perfect everything because I'm just living life. And I want my body to be able to respond to that. But to start, opposite hand of the leg you're standing on, do that nice little lean into that leg. Take as much weight as you can without pain. And you feel secure. If you don't need to hold on, go ahead and work that leg, right? But it doesn't always have to be directly forward. It can be forward and a little bit in and the foot turned in. It can be forward and a little bit out and the foot turned out. You can go backward. Go backward as if you're going to sit in a chair. You can go sideways. When you go sideways, you can turn out a little bit. You can turn in a little bit, right? When you go sideways, you can go forward a little bit, or you can go backward a little bit. Vary your positions. You'll be shocked at how well your body adapts to those variations and how much more functional you start to feel after a relatively short period of time. But always remember this: no pain and no fear of losing your balance, because your brain will cheat as soon as that happens. You'll not be training the right muscles the right way, and you'll be training in dysfunction. And nobody wants that, right? So it's not about your hamstrings being too tight. It's about training them properly, creating stability. And when you train them properly, you get a nice stable pelvis. And then your hamstrings don't have to try to keep you up like the reins on a horse or the guide wires on a telephone pole, right? And your quads can track your kneecaps beautifully when they're trained properly. So, front, back, outer, inner thighs in functional, authentic movements is the best thing you can do. And you can add arms. You can do all kinds of crazy things, right? And really get your body ready for real life. So I look forward to your comments. I thank you for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you aren't a subscriber. And I look forward to you seeing the next video. See you next time.